Welcome, everybody, to the February edition of 100 Pictures of Honey. I'm Donna Voyer. I'm your host and one-woman show running this series. I'm so excited tonight to have these three readers with us. Just as a quick reminder before we begin, each of our readers will have 15 minutes to read. Hopefully, everyone in the audience will stay muted while they do so. And please feel free to lend your support in the chat or using their reactions. I will give a brief introduction to each reader, but I will put their official and, may I say, very decorated bios from this group of three people into the chat. And I'll do that usually once or twice while they're reading, so that if you want to know where to find more of their work or where to purchase their books, you'll be able to do that. So without further ado, we are going to begin with our first reader, Subhaga Crystal Bacon. I first encountered Subhaga's work online. I think it was in the Night Heron Barks, if I'm not mistaken. And then quickly looked up more of her work. I was very moved by her very deft weaving of the landscapes of the natural world and the body and the mind and the spiritual world, and how those three things, all of them, four things, are all nurtured, both nurtured and transgressed. I think her poems address both of those things. She's very accomplished. I'm going to put her bio in the chat and you'll see what I mean. And one of the poems that I really love by Subhaga is called No Reservation, Colville National Park. And that poem ends in this way. You can walk to Canada from here, as Native people must have done before the border, before ships and trappers, and Lewis and Clark with their slave guide, Sacagawea, slave bride, bought and mounted and with child, a child herself. Before all the deaths and lies, we prize this solitude, stolen paradise. And I have such gratitude tonight that we get to hear more poems from Subhaga. So I'm going to give it to her. Here she is.
Wow, Donna, thank you. That was such a moving introduction. This is the first reading I've done with strangers for a very long time. I mean, I read locally in town and with my poetry group, but I haven't done a Zoom reading like this, and I just really appreciate how well you saw me in your introduction. I really appreciated that so much, and really looking forward to hearing both Nicole and Matt read tonight. And thanks to everybody who came out today to support us. I'm going to be reading from both of my forthcoming collections. Surrender of Water in Hidden Places will be out from Red Flag Poetry next month. And that was written as part of two artist residencies that were sponsored by regional arts organizations, one on the Methow River and one on the Wenatchee River, which are two big watersheds in north central Washington. The full-length collection Transitory, coming from BOA Editions in November, is a chronicling of and reckoning with murders of trans and gender nonconforming people in 2020, along with my own queer journey as it's been unfolding throughout my lifetime. So I'm going to start with the chapbook. The poems in the first section often reference poems by William Stafford that sort of punctuate the Methow River, starting at the very top of the watershed. I'll be starting up there and reading my way down. There are 19 poems were commissioned by the Forest Service, and I think there are 9 plaques, so you can hike around along the Methow River and stop and read poetry. To be a mountain here, silver star. Ancestral teeth and bones from when earth was big, empty of our incessant crawling, scrawling ourselves across its face, carved by ice that would dwarf us today. The scouring glaciers calved and loosed by great quakes millennia in the making, and fires spreading the cape of pines that curls along roadside, lessening as they climb the bony flanks, sandy soils, difficult purchase. Still they rise like so many needles, stitching green brocade of shelter and shade for the lives in their weft. Against the sky, for now, The crest lies like a deer jaw, teeth broken from snow, ice, time. No, refined by centuries of freeze and thaw, by the sharp hooves and claws of the wild, patient, withstanding the change we make. So I have to adjust my screen so I can see you while I'm reading. It's way better. Listen to the river, Mazama Suspension Bridge, where we are. If you are full of wonder and without fear of the unmarked way, the wild life clustered together in ranks or communities of deep difference, the spun thread across a trail, uncertain land beneath your feet, the river is calling to you from its secret stream that eddies around a spit of brush old as life. This is where we are, myself and all the parts of me, feet bare to shins, arms to shoulder that meets beneath a slip of cloth, clavicle, and therein the beating heart of me in time with this bright, clear water on its busy way to the sea. If you want to know how to live, come here and witness the surrender of water weeds that sweep the shallow bottom, reach but never leave. Algae-coated stones pressed into sand and mossy rocks that cry out the endless caress of water. Listen, whatever you are carrying here, grief, bitterness, loss, the river has heard it all. Empty yourself in its constant flow. And now I'm going to move over to the Wenatchee watershed, which is, I think, south. I'm really geographically impaired, but another major watershed. What is this place? There are still birds filling the morning air with song above the yawn of wind, mosquitoes aplenty for food, vine maple keys, shadbush in bloom, beaver signs in water bisected by dead trees in this pool, off-white river, the big drainage from Glacier Peak, Napiqua. On the trail where shallow-rooted Doug fir fell over winter, trunks stacked waist-high must be climbed to get here. They're like sentinels, arms crossed in stern welcome. This place is sacred. Water flows to feed what lives below. Homestead, orchard, city. Air is born here, cleaned and freed to sustain you, visitor. This particular place is a really well-guarded secret for everybody who lives in that part of the state, and I was really lucky to be allowed to go in and have a look at that. Wenatchee River, Swiftwater Picnic Area, Tumwater. All this fury as you pass through the channel you made eons ago. You are the sound of what remains. Around you, everywhere, change. Towns sprung up from your water like weeds, like some crop that draws feeders, people swarming like insects. Here, the drone of motorcycles is erased. You are your own theme, a fringe of wildness just off the road. There's no way down to where you tear by, nowhere safe at least. Your western side rises straight up, a mix of burnt trees and new growth, green still, summer a month away. I cannot see, but I know on that flank, life adapts, thrives. We're at the point where we must change or die, but in our absence, you will take back what is yours. Remain alive. And then just this last one from the chapbook section of the reading. It's the last poem from the book, Sleeping Lady Canal. It's deceptive, deep, green, and wide, this man-made tributary from the icicle. I stop between trees, maple and pine, where grass is knee-deep, and wind through branches and leaves shushes the sound of the spillway just north of here. There's a narrow cut in the bank where water laps, and I butt slide down until my boots touch mica-flecked wet gray sand. I want to strip naked and slip in, swim across to the other side, leaves caught in my hair, but I almost feel the drop where water thins over the concrete to plunge into a wild white pool. Sometimes it feels like a thin line between dying and staying alive, but bankside with the penstemon, these ancient trees and firm ground beneath me, I'm anchored to this side. So I'm going to read just two poems from Transitory. It's hard to decide what to read from a book that has so much scope. They're sort of catalog poems that give a flavor of the book, I hope. Justice, an acrostic, a catalog of trans murders in the first half of 2020. Just driving a taxi in Oklahoma was deadly for Dustin Parker, 25. Using the women's bathroom, Alexa, homeless in Puerto Rico. Social media led her killers to her. Yampi Mendez Orocho's profile, Fuck Love, tells his story, dead at 19. Monica Diamond honored LGBTQ mothers through the International Mother of the Year pageant. Misgendered, dead named, 34, North Carolina. Caught with a stolen wig in Harlem, Lexi Ebony Sutton, 33, loved poetry and everyone she met. Johanna Metzger, 25, self-taught musician who could play just about any instrument, stabbed in Maryland. Selena Angelique Vasquez, 31, using vacation time to visit her friend Leila Peleas Sanchez, 21, in Puerto Rico, both shot, their bodies burned. Then Penelope Diaz Ramirez in the Bayamon Correctional Center, time done in a men's prison. Nina Pop in Missouri, 28, stabbed in her apartment. I love myself now, looking at the pictures before I transitioned. Helly J. O'Regan, 20, cleaning the barbershop in Texas where she worked, stabbed. Tallahassee police accosted him, even though he had no weapons, said, "Stop moving," and are ending Tony McDade. June 9, Remy Fells pulled from the Schuylkill, legless. She lived her truth so loud you could hear her a mile away. An 18-year-old boy and 14-year-old girl led by an adult man shot Raya Milton, home health worker, 25, in Ohio. Jane Thompson shot by police, troubled in her transition in Colorado. Bail was refused for an 18-year-old student in Chicago who went home with Selena Reyes Hernandez and learning she was trans, came back later mad as hell and shot her 9 times. Brayla Stone, 17, Arkansas, evidence of hate crime absent, was left in a car by another teen charged with a prior death. Just an hour ago, arrested while I'm writing, the man who killed Mercy Mack, 22, Dallas, unless she released a video of them together, shot her multiple times. 1 of 5 found dead since the start of July, Shockey Peters, 32, Amite, Louisiana, Bree Black, 27, July 3rd, shot 2. Summer Taylor, white, non-binary, killed after a car drove into a crowd of protesters in Seattle, Washington on July 4th at the Black Femme March, not yet ruled a homicide because driving a car into a group of protesters on Independence Day is apparently excusable, or what, manslaughter? Binary loophole that says not woman, not murder. I need a sip of water after that. And thanks to Jen Martelli, this poem exists. She asked me at some point when I was working on the original form of the manuscript, if I could write a poem that sort of explained why I, in particular, was writing this book of poems about trans people, mostly trans people of color. This attempts to answer that question. Why I'm writing about the murders of trans and gender nonconforming people in the year of COVID. Once I started, I couldn't stop. Every day, I lifted the bandage to see the latest wound, infection spreading to rot. I was asked to write a poem about social justice, Black Lives Matter, gun violence. A queer person who survived to elderhood, I wrote about this intersection of fears, an epidemic beyond the epidemic of the year. Suspended in time, sunlit window, feet on the red rug of my room, a new day, Googling trans murders. I was whole before and a whole after. So fast in July, Marilyn, Dior, Keisha, Aja, then the long break, 2-week vacation. I kept my vigil, even prayed daily, let it be over, please, no more. Then came Key, August 13th, and 2 weeks later, Leah, the end of the month, and Ellie Che drowned off Jones Beach, maybe an accident, like Isabella after Labor Day, who fell or was pushed from a roof. No proof in either case of a crime. Fall brought the death of Ariane Burnett, shot in Independence, Maya by her boyfriend, Philadelphia. Micheline, the sixth to die in Puerto Rico, but not the last. By October, it was clear that the year would surpass the one before and the one before that. Brooke, the 32nd, 20 years old, the 21st Black trans person murdered so far. So far, we seem to come celebrating National Coming Out Day that claimed Sarah in Indianapolis. 2 weeks later, Angel in Memphis. Every day I checked for news, hung in hope for an end of violence, of death. Every day I held my breath until I knew who'd been slain by stranger or lover as autumn uncovered the bony limbs of trees. November 4th, Schuyler Heath mourned as he. On the 17th, Unieski in Miami. Day of Trans Remembrance, November 20th, Chemisha chased down by a man with a gun, and Asia, who said she was going on a... Even chronicling this, the daily plunge to heartache exhausts me. I wish I didn't have this need to record what came before, what follows here. One by one, each name, each life. Kimberly, the oldest at 55, Jaheim for her pantsuit, Courtney on Christmas, and Alexandria, the last of the year, Boxing Day. Year ends and year begins on Epiphany, Tiana, then Samuel, Bianca, Dominique, 50 bands, Alexis, China, JJ and Jasmine, Jenna, Diamond, Rihanna, Jada, Dominique, Remy, Tiara, Natalia, Iris, Tiffany, Curry, Jahira, Whispering Wind, Sophie, Danica, Serenity, Ollie, only 17, Thomas, Poe, EJ, Adolin, Taya, Shay, Tierra Marie, Miss Coco, and Pooh. Names taken to reflect new lives. It's September 4th, 2021. That's the count to August 23rd. 35 trans lives taken in 8 months. 35, the average life expectancy. Midlife, all the sweetness denied. To grow wise, get fat, find love, make home. I need to name this, the brutality of tallying the dead. Horror in equal measure that they can and must be counted. Over halfway through a new year, new era, some might say, the list of names rolls out, rolls on. I'm here, not just counting, but incanting. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh my, that was stunning. I think Nicole said in the chat, just to hear all of the names, that line you said, yeah, I must name them. So beautiful. That's going to be a book for everyone to be watching out for in November from BOA Editions, Transitory. And the chapbook is out now, and I had put all of that information in the chat, so hopefully you can check those out. Wow. Well, Nicole Callihan has the unenviable job of following that reading. I first read Nicole's work in Swim, which I get every day in my email, and then branched out from there. I one of the pleasures of this series is learning about poets who have been writing for years that I just haven't had the pleasure to know about. And I really love that a lot of her work has this kind of ethereal, almost mystical quality where she uses repeated structures or repeated language, but that's always balanced. I think with this, there's a directness that kind of grounds the poems in reality, even when they're a little bit in the realm of the other. She has beautiful poems about all kinds of things. And one of my favorite poems of hers, which you can find on poets.org, is called The Origin of Birds. And so I'm just going to read the ending of that poem before you get more work from Nicole. And it goes like this. The flowers bowed their heads as if to say enough. And so Eve, surrounded by peonies and alone enough, wished very hard for something. And the wish was enough to make the pine cone grow wings. The wish was enough to point to the sky, say bird, and wait for something to sing. And I'm really excited that we get to hear more of Nicole's poems sing for you this evening. Nicole.
Thank you so much, Donna. And thank you, Subhaga. So moving to hear your work. At first I was like, wow, like all this cool landscape stuff. What am I doing in New York? I want to go slide like butt first down these beautiful hills. And then the just like the trauma of the chapbook. I mean, just really gorgeous. So thank you so much. I am reading from my new book, This Strange Garment, and it started to appear in people's mailboxes like 2 days ago, which got me really excited. It's officially out March 3rd, but one of my closest friends sent me a picture. She had gotten it first, and I was so glad it was her. I was like, ah. So, but it is a book which navigates my breast cancer diagnosis and treatment during the pandemic. So that's what all these poems are about. So This Strange Garment. Imogene. Blue cloth gown washed so often and at such high temperatures as to become the softest thing that has ever touched my body. I want to lie down on the cold tiles, pull the gown over my head, over my mother's head, grandmother's, the radiologist Galena's head. She touches me with such kindness and intelligence that I want to kiss her, but instead I cry and thank her. She says something in Russian, then says it's her job, and I wonder if I might ever do my job so well. I think about the surgery. I think I want them to take both of my breasts. Just take them, leave long scars. I will be a different woman, more blue cloth, bendy straw, that ice for a little while, then out on the street. No better, just more me, maybe. No shame, no stretch at the buttons. No, my eyes are up here. Look me in my eyes. I'm alive. Look me in my eyes. Galena tells me to breathe. Breathe, honey, she says. Galena tells me to hold my breath. Now breathe. Now hold it again. Now fold your arm like a wing. Now look this way. Pretend the door is a window and you're looking through it. And what you see is not beautiful, but is what is. At Lost Lake. The hands are not stopped at noon, are pouring clean water from a green pitcher. The vacancy in me flashing from the road, swimming pool, cable TV, park in back, the motor in and the two-hearted ale, the dragonfly. This afternoon, my friends have bare feet and the frogs are fighting. It is not lost on us that we will each die, one and then the other, organs hardening. I will make myself soft. I will own myself. I will watch the shadow of these leaves until the clouds come, and then I will wait for the shape to return. O inlet, O cove. Caitlin rows us to the middle of the lake, her slight, strong shoulders. We sit in the sun until we grow thirsty. Zoe has baked a cake for my 46th birthday. Will we sing? We are already singing. What's surrendered? Which road did we ride in on and which out? A black band on a straw hat, a green fly on the blue cheese. It's August again, the ache, the downpour, to be out of your head, out of your element, out in the elements, elemental, in and out and without and with and with and with. If a day is to eternity as eternity is to a day, if evening, if when. Zoe says she's grown brave about picking up the parts of dead rodents. And we have all grown brave, haven't we? Brave and undignified. The end of summer collecting like sweat on the back of our thighs. Within reach. The storm moves towards the house. How many miles between the sound and the light? What is the trick for not getting struck? To stand in the storm like our ancestors. How time moves through us like a current. How the current moves through us like a wave. How I am unmoved at the dark of the window. All things are insufficient. Our bodies are animals and will be. I come with little to offer, a rod. The tree's trunk splays and parts says, touch me. In the far kitchen, a man with pistachios and a bottle of Coke. At the bend, boiled peanuts and a brown bag. Without proper grounding, we burn. I dare you to look away. Double dog, triple, the stark shadow I make of you, the rumbling, deep and far and close, so close. O storm, you are within. Amazon. To get through what promises to be a long winter, I've purchased a UV lamp. It's about the size of a small dinner plate and weighs a little more than a pound. Because I have Prime, it arrived in one day. On a Wednesday in the half dark of noon, still in my flowered robe, still with tubes draining fluid from my body, I thought I'd die, or want to die so much that I might as well die, before again seeing a crocus push from the earth. By Thursday, I was bathed in light, artificial light, electric light, but light. Of course, I'm not without shame. The cardboard boxes stacked and tied in the pantry, and the other cardboard boxes which arrive and arrive. Juven to mix into water for wound healing, a new dry brush, the machine to project stars on Eva's ceiling because there's a pandemic and I have cancer, so she should have stars on her ceiling if she wants them. The protein bars and macadamia nuts, one of those triangle Calvin Klein bras for if I ever don't need the sad pink bra the hospital issued. Another machine to project stars on Ella's ceiling because Eva has stars on her ceiling. And there's a pandemic and I have cancer, so Ella should have stars too if she wants them. Artificial, electric, but stars. and another box to break down. Amazon, A meaning without, plus mazzo's variant of mastos, breast, meaning without breast, meaning without breast. Woman without breasts, woman without breasts, but with many boxes. Woman without breasts, but with many boxes which will arrive in one day. Prime woman, woman in prime, or woman who while in prime paid for prime, and so even after prime does not cancel prime because woman wants light. Who can so easily give up light? The Amazons cut or burned off one breast so they could draw bowstrings more efficiently, but I can hardly throw a ball, and I let the doctor do it. I followed my doctor, a pretty woman with 5-year-old triplets, a woman who wears gorgeous, expensive high heels, but who for surgery was clogged and masked, into the operating room. I said, "It is so weird to walk myself into the operating room." Everything was bright. The anesthesiologist gave me a thumbs up, and I said something like, "Whoa, science is cool." And when I woke up in ICU, the light was dim and the machines were beeping, and I was underneath a plastic blanket filled with hot air. For a while, I pretended I was at the beach. My friend came to sit on the blanket we'd laid out, and for a long time, we stared straight into the sun. And then, when it got too hot, we took off our clothes and swam in the sea. But then the drugs wore off. For anesthesia, the Amazons likely used powdered opium and a cup of wine, or nothing. The former sounds rather delicious and appealing, something I might add to my cart or buy now, something that might be arriving tomorrow, something I might feel a twinge of shame about as I take a knife and cut into the seam of the box, surprised at how easily it collapses, all of it, the body, its counterparts, like tripping on the cord to your new lamp, how the darkness comes as quickly as the light, how the light, if I can get down on my knees and find the outlet, might come again. The as if of. I haven't yet mentioned they moved my belly button. Actually, they didn't move it. They took it off and moved everything around it, and then they sewed it back into the exact spot I'd point to if someone were to ask where my belly button is, like asking a toddler where her ears are, her mouth, her face, like stealing her nose, the rows of your thumb between your fingers, like asking the dog where her bone is. Though no one asks where my belly button is. I wonder why it wasn't tossed with the other scraps. In this way, just after the solstice, most everything began feeling arbitrary. The ice cubes floating in the toilet, a spoon stuck under a pillow, Mama Heaton's gallbladder in a pink plastic bucket, that kid from 7th grade's spleen, the buttermilk my stepmother pours on her cornbread, the alphabet, the weather, the yellow stars scrubbed into your skin, that paper donkey with so many tails where a tail shouldn't be. I'm not sure what to say about the balloons tangled in the gumball tree, the fibrous forest, another vial of drawn blood. I doubt I could pick my body from a lineup. For weeks, I felt like I was dragging a sour dish towel beneath my brain. That one, I'd say to the lineup officer, the one with the lemons, the one that reeks of this morning's milk, last night's lamb juice, the raw food I sneaked to the dog. In the beginning, there was a body. Also the fear of never being desired again, of never desiring, of saying desire so many times it becomes dire. Then the incinerated parts, the parts that washed down the drain, the parts that were useless but still salvaged, the parts that no longer served any use. If you say belly button over and over, it'll start to sound like something else, like saying hydrangea until it becomes a bomb. There is no happiness, like the week after a toothache, when the halo of pain fades and there are no longer ponies running in your field of vision, and you've stopped praying, stopped bargaining, stopped listing all you'd give, please God, if only, please God, then nothing but the absence of what defined you, the sound, dumb breath. I'll end with this. I all but missed the magnolias, all but missed the breaking of the blossoms, being so preoccupied with my own brokenness, my own breaking, another blood panel, another marker to draw another incision to take another organ no longer needed, the sky a tilt and the birds. When I was pregnant, I walked around in awe of all the people. You were once inside someone, I'd think, and you grew and grew, you and you and you. I'd be at the bagel shop, racked with tenderness that each body had grown. Now, same, in awe of you and you and you and you. And you who just pulled your sweater over your head, and you with your black dog, and you smoking the joint, and you and you and you grew, yes, grow, and too you will die, and you will die, and you will die, and you and you and you will die. And then who will sit beneath this tree, missing what's already broken?
Oh my gosh. I wasn't expecting to be this emotional this evening. Gorgeous, gorgeous poems, incredible. The rhythm of your language, the repetition, and such beautiful, beautiful affirmative poems about something that no one wants to experience. So thank you so much for that, Nicole. It's beautiful reading. Our last reader this evening, sorry, Matt, you get your alphabetical order. You got to follow both of those lovely women now. I first met Matt and heard him read about 11 years ago when he was in the Chicago area reading for a local reading series. I think it was right after American Busboy came out. And he also has another book called, had another book out at the time called Sudden Anthem, which was his first book. And I'm pretty sure that he read the poem I'm going to share briefly, that he read it that night, and it's become a favorite poem of mine. But what I love about Matthew's work is it's mix of kind of the strange humor and strange juxtapositions, but every single one of his poems reveals such a beautiful truth about living and about reality and being a person in the world. And his style is singular. I don't think anybody else writes like Matthew, and arresting. And this poem from his first book is one of my favorite poems, and it's called Poem. Sometimes I'd drive to the airport just to wander the terminals, an insomniac wannabe Whitman in a casino of blown leaves, would watch the old Greek woman in her upside-down pineapple dress sell a Zen garden of trinkets to new arrivals. The hungry couples kissing at the gates like protesters doused in kerosene, their tongues the blue hiss of a match. I eavesdropped on suits named Don and the Colonel as they prattled into cell phones, moving some Africa of information like a hive of killer bees. A religious experience, late night variety show starring cannibals, the psychedelic furs, and Philip K. Dick. It healed me so good, I thought everyone was Jesus. And now we get to hear Matt read more poems that will both heal and make us laugh and make us wonder. Here's
I hope so. Thank you everybody for being here. There's a lot of hi Catherine Kerr and Chris Kelsey, friends I haven't seen in a long time. Subhaga, Nicole, I don't know what to say. I actually feel really lucky to be following you, Nicole. I think if whatever poems I make, I probably owe them to my mother who raised 3 boys on her own and never got to be an artist because of domesticity. And then she passed relatively young from breast cancer. But she was very funny and always saw things humorously. And so the poems that I write and the poems I'm gonna be reading from Doom Scroll are kind of this exploration of the domestic as I've experienced it. And it's hard not to think of my mom at these moments. And so I try to see things with how I think she would have seen things. So this first poem is called Love Will Tear Us Apart. It's a name of a Joy Division song. You're a 50-something Gen Xer and a former latchkey kid. You have the privilege of a mortgage and you've mortgaged the future with your privilege. There are at least 6 different kinds of jellies in your fridge. It's confusing. All of this ordinary, extraordinary, all of this supervision. You've kicked your kids off the computers and TV and made them listen to Joy Division. You're waiting for them to get bored enough to play a board game or have a conversation. You move the upstairs bedroom to the downstairs bedroom and the downstairs bedroom to the curb. The sun is trying to come out, but so is the moon, and so are the cicadas, and so is the lightning. There are rocks that your kids throw into a lake, and there are rocks that the lake will slowly throw back. At the feeder, a hummingbird bullies another hummingbird, and you can't get over it. The comedy and the tragedy of hummingbird politics, wrapped in the beauty of hummingbirds. This poem is called Cul-de-sac. Every night I was eviscerated, a nuclear strike parachuting down, and these were basically my nightmares in the 80s. The inevitable late summer light that fills me with an exquisite melancholy. My friend who became a cop and my friend who went to prison grew up in the same cul-de-sac, and I wouldn't want to live there in that cul-de-sac's fallacy of circular reasoning. The therapist I saw wondered what I feared more, boredom or death or spammers calling about expired car warranties. There's the simple, satisfying bread that I can bake and the easy way that I'm distracted and mistrust myself. First, I read books to help me understand my father because he always hired the same handyman whose face had been disfigured in an accident. And then I read books to help me be a father, but there's an equation that I can't make sense of. Eventually, I quit wiping my nose on my sleeve. Eventually, I got hired at a restaurant where I bussed tables either high or extremely hungover. To the fry cook who would always ask, I'd say, I'm doing good. To which he would reply with authority, you mean you're doing well. This poem is called Punk Song. And my kids are going to show up in some of these poems, which is why they're nowhere within earshot of me right now, because this is the worst thing that could happen to them. Punk Song. My daughter worried the milk had spoiled because her brother left it out, but I was worried that the kids were spoiled. Had the milk been out for an hour, or was it just fine 5 minutes ago? The kids were smart and sophisticated enough to want to play in the woods, so that's where we would go. But we would have to cross some busy streets first. And you never know if all those drivers have accident-free records, but that's the thrill of crossing a street. But before we look both ways, we must remember to look both ways. And when I told my kids that anxiety is simply a dump of chemicals putting your prefrontal cortex on hold while the emotions take over, it really freaked them out. They asked about sword fighting with sticks. But what happens if the sword fighting gets out of hand? What if someone loses an eye on the rusty fence near the rickety slide and that used needle in the park? I wanted my kids to banish those thoughts like the French fries someone had thrown. And we were almost to the woods dark with feelings, with trails winding through the undergrowth, the trails dividing into more trails, the undergrowth where when the wind blows, it sounds like heavy breathing extremely nearby. But what if we get lost? They asked. Seriously, I said, I'm lost already. This is called Put It on a T-shirt, and it's for my neighbor who I get along with. Your neighbor in the MAGA hat has answers. He lets you borrow his tools. His bird feeder and yours get raided by the exact same squirrels. How about that for a country song? You imagine a future where the important questions that unfold might go something like this. Is Jesus king, or is science king, or is Budweiser still king? Death by 1,000 paperless billing paper cuts. You keep checking the news to see who's been captured and who's winning. You keep forgetting to invent the TikTok dance or whatever your destiny is. You're pretty sure, though, that the arguments your neighbor's lawn signs are having will outlive the lawns. You're pretty sure we shouldn't be so annoyed at the squirrels for their perfectly American desires. You could put that on a t-shirt, your neighbor says, and on this point, you agree. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through here. This poem is called Eye Against Eye. The middle-aged men I knew growing up, their beer bellies made them look pregnant with beer. Their lives made me buy that Bad Brains record. What if I wore a bandana and jumped out of a plane? What if Bad Brains had sung about the audacity of listening to Top 40 while picking up your kids from school in a minivan full of groceries? Who would have listened? The first flip phones were almost as smart as the dogs. The new toasters look like miniature megachurches. Chicken sandwiches are taking over the world, and love songs are lying about love taking over the radio. Paranoid delusions are taking over your midlife crisis. Didn't you get that memo? Do you remember that arrogant punker from school who wore the spiked belts and a green mohawk. He sincerely tried to warn us. One day, he said, you will be a cautionary tale for your kids. This poem is called The Great Pyramids. You travel to the Great Pyramids of toilet paper at Walmart. You wear a mask. It would be fascinating, you think, to see oil paintings of politicians getting fact-checked in real time on live TV. In a dream, your arm is hooked up to something that resembles a pulsing squid, but it's just some secret to your mother's meatloaf the authorities are after. You understand that the flash grenades will light up the streets like the 4th of July, even though it's not the 4th of July. Is history a series of reforms against everyone that we must bang our heads against? Does it require all the Walmart greeters' strength to smile in front of the display of the tiny American flags? You remember a game of Scrabble where you misspelled mistake as mistake, but you love steak. And you wonder when the protesters will set up tables where they can sell their homemade relish. The Great Pyramid scheme continues to be built by the exact number of suckers who are born every minute. Your reason, sorry, did somebody say something? Oh, sorry. You reason that the mysterious void at its center is probably the tomb of an ancient scam. You understand it's not the heat, but the heat wave. It's turning all the maps the exact blood red of your stepdad's power tie. I'm sorry, I thought I heard like a voice jump in, and then I realized it's my son in the basement dribbling a basketball and listening loudly to his music. So my apologies. Okay, I'm just going to read a couple more, and 2 more. This poem is called Gutter Guy. What the gutter guy does is put his mind in the gutter. He comes over and he blows out the rotting leaves like bad memories. We have a tree wizard too. He pumps a treatment into the ash so the borers won't crash it down into the death of me. Anyone can see I'm trapped. I thrash in the honeysuckle, its twining vines succeeding when I land a gash in my thumb with the axe. If only I could fix the fixtures. If only all these insider goons who ensure nothing good gets done would go do something else. When the sky brightens, I'm blinded. The opinionated blue jays are like talk show hosts. Fat chance, they jeer at our fatter cat sunning himself near a bag of charcoal I left out in the rain. A neighbor texts, wondering what our daughter is allergic to as she and their daughter raid a bag of Funyuns. I didn't know that Funyuns were still legal. And will the polar ice keep melting if my son leaves another wet towel on the floor? How much longer will I live inside this self, in this body that wants and wants? I saute some onions for the enchiladas that no one really wants me to make. Standing there in my old school Adidas and grass-stained jeans, spatula in one hand, a flat beer in the other, I am the dad my dad and I never had. I have these feelings now, like the bills I'm never going to pay off. I have these feelings like all the warranties I dig up in the junk drawer that promise to take care of it all. Thank you. And this will be my last poem. It's for my daughter. It's called Disentanglement Puzzle. My daughter solved the disentanglement puzzle, picked a fight with her mother over something someone may or may not have said, filled a jar with wet toilet paper into which she planted sunflower seeds and a handful of hope. She put her rats in a handbag and then, while still in her jammies, skateboarded them around the block on her brother's skateboard, which he was furious about because she hadn't asked. And when she returned, she made a big production of it, unclipped her helmet like it was advanced algebra, kicked off her shoes as if she just crossed a desert. Finally, she said, my work is done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matt. Really looking forward to the new book. It's on my AWP purchase list. I've been on a stop hold from buying books until I go because I have no control there. All three of you tonight were just wonderful. And even though your poems were vastly different, they all had things, threads that pulled them together that made it a really beautiful reading. So if any of the audience, I'm going to turn the recording off. If any of the audience, when I do that, would like to unmute and say hello, you can. Before we do that, though, I thank you all for being here. And our next reading will be March 16th, and it's going to be a doozy because we are going to be celebrating the release of the Let Me Say This Dolly Parton anthology with editor Dustin Brookshire, who's here, editor Julie E. Blumke, and multiple readers from the anthology. So mark your calendars for the Dolly party on March 16th. I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you to our readers who are just fantastic. And I'm going to stop the recording. And then if you'd like to hang out and say hello, feel free to